I am a big fan of the simple elegant of the game Patchwork, and I really like the genre of roll and draw games. Say recently I played the Drizzle or Doodle So Clever. I'm basically obsessed with the game Railroad Inc. that I try to play every time I get a chance. So when in my friend the local game store, I saw that there was a version of Patchwork that was roll and write, I got immensely excited. What could go wrong? This has to be a match made in heaven. Also, it plays for 1 to 6 players. That is solitaire option. I also like that. It's clearly portable game. It's clearly a game that is easy to teach. You could just guess that. So all things that I love about the game. However, there are also times when I say, oh, these things are great, but only if the game is good. Otherwise, what is the point? There's no chance I was not going to like a version of Patchwork made in a roll and write format. And yet. Now, each player will get a sheet such as this one. Each player will need a pen or a pencil. Yes, there is this little set of pencils that come with the game, but there are some strange decisions here. For example, this is one of the colors. You see that? Well, because I don't. And other colors, you really have to press, and it takes a while before you can really make a mark that is visible. That's why I recommend use a pen or pencil instead, or even better, a crayon. These things to me are pretty useless. Each player starts with one of the starting cards assigned randomly. They all cover an area that is 7 squares large, and simply each player receives a random one, and each player will cover that area on their personal sheet. Say, this is what we got, and this is what we got to work with. And we place that there. You could cross out any space, meaning as long as you keep this configuration here, it can be anywhere on the board, as long as it's entirely on the board. Later, as long as you don't cover previous areas that you already blanked out. The rules for placement is pretty much as like cover areas that it makes sense that you would, on the stuff that looks just silly, like you're trying to cheat. Then we have these main cards here. We shuffle them, make a single deck, and after we shuffle them, we take 8 of them out and we place them in a circle around the draw deck, just like so. As you can see, they represent different pieces that we can use during the game. Also, the pieces, which is nice, are represented in their quote-unquote main form and then in the mirror-like form so that you can see what they will look like. You don't have to mentally turn them around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're good. Then we place this little guy there, and then we're ready to start, and we roll the die. Doesn't matter who rolls the die, doesn't matter who moves the token by that number of space. It matters that once you land on an area, everyone has to cross out that shape on their personal sheet. And suppose that that little L, I decide to do that one. That's how it works. Then we discard this card, but plus we don't replace it just yet. We roll again. 1, and now we all have to place this one here, which I will, for example, place. I don't know. I don't really know where it is. That would not be a terrible idea. I guess I could do it. What do you think? I could maybe do these 3 here, and then these 2 here, and I hope I'll find a way of filling those up. And then we roll again, and we move again, and everybody crosses out that thing. Oh, this is lucky because these 3 I can put there. So, well, you get the sense. We continue like this, playing and discarding cards that have been selected by Lady Luck and that people have crossed out on their personal sheet until there are only 2 left. The 2 that are left may be anywhere, but in which case then you put them there in front of the guy, so it'll be the first 2 for next round. Then the players will score, and we'll see what that means. And then you draw enough cards to again have 8 out there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you repeat like that, like this, 2 more times. That is, you have a total of 3 rounds. At the end of the last round, when there will be 3 cards left in play, you do not roll a die then. Everybody simply has a chance of drawing any of the 3 remaining things. You also have some special powers which you can use once per game, so you cross that once you use it. This power allows you to use not the card that the little dude ends movement on, but one of the 2 adjacent cards adjacent to that one. This allows you to fill in a single square anywhere on your board. This one is a fun one, allows you to cut a piece. Basically, you can imagine that you're doing a single cut across one of the pieces so that you would turn the piece into 2, and then you're using only one of them, not both. Say I could cut this one here and then use the single square, or use a straight line of 5, or I could cut it here and then use a straight 2, or this L here. You cannot cut the piece into 3, so for example I could not use this one as a straight 3 because I would need to cut this square and this square here. And then I have an action that allows me to take again any of the previous ones. Now, as for scoring, at the end of each of the 3 rounds, you add your score. How do you score? You look at your quilt here that you're making, and you're trying to make it as well as packed as possible, looking like a triangle. A triangle, that makes no sense whatsoever. Looking like a rectangle, or even better, like a ginormous square, but in any case, you want it to be all full. Basically, in order to score, you select a rectangle from the areas that you have covered in tile, and it should be as large as possible. The largest rectangle that I can see right now would be this one. You don't need to actually outline it this way when you play the game, but it may help now. So this rectangle is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 3. Within that rectangle, you check the largest square that you have, and each square in that square, each space in that square is worth 1 point. So I have a square that is 3 by 3 that is 9, so that is worth 9 points. Then for the remaining area, I can count each column or row once, and it will count as 1 point. So I have, if I count this way, I have 3 rows, so I'll choose that as opposed to 2 columns. So 3 rows is 3 points. So 9 plus 3, I have 12 points for this round. And suppose that later I get 30, later I get 45 at the end of the third. Finally, I'll get a penalty for each square that I have not covered. Suppose that's how many I have not covered. Add all of the positives, subtract the negatives, and at the end of the third round, the player with the highest score is the winner of the game. And this is how you play Patchwork Doodle. So this is how you play Patchwork Doodle, but will you play it? Should you play it? That's entirely up to you, but as for me, I don't see myself playing this game again. The game is just so bland and flavorless. I guess they wanted to to boil down Patchwork into an even easier and more digestible version of itself. I guess they boiled it down a little too much and they took out too much of the flavor. And now this is just the tofu version of Patchwork, not even like that flavor tofu to try to taste like something else. You just draw these things, and it doesn't even feel like you're really playing a game. It almost feels just like a structured, like a craft. Really, it's somehow a guided activity to draw your own quilt. I played the game only solitaire. Maybe you want to hear that disclaimer, but incidentally, the game is 100% multiplayer solo with no interaction whatsoever. So there is really no difference in when you play it solitaire or not solitaire. No interaction, nothing like that. Which again, of course, will not sit well in all groups or with all players. I like, when possible, a little bit of interaction, especially if it's indirect, so I don't attack you directly necessarily unless it's a war game, but I'm taking a piece that maybe you will want. No possibility there, because it's a game of perfect information and all resources being available. So much so that, in fact, I'm not really sure what the point is of rolling the die and moving around, because with the exception of the ability that lets you get one of the adjacent pieces, you will basically draw all the pieces that are visible on the board at the beginning. And since you can draw any piece any way you want, they don't have to be adjacent, they don't have to be in a certain area, I don't see the point of rolling, so maybe now I'll get the L and later the longer L or the X, because ultimately I can draw either of them anywhere. So it almost feels like you could just line up 6 cards there, everybody draws them, and then you get 6 more and 6 more, and that's it. Yes, of course, 6 out of 8, you don't know the 2 that will be left out. If not, of course, those 2 will be available next round. So I don't see much of a point there. It almost feels like they added the die roll just so that they could define, describe, market this game as part of the now very successful genre of roll and move. There's just nothing interesting in this game to me. The decisions are pretty obvious, and I love Tetris kind games. I love puzzle games. I reviewed last year the entire trilogy of those, Indian Summer, etc., etc. But this one just doesn't have enough to hold my interest, to make me want to take it out of game night. It's a solitaire game that just doesn't work. Just doesn't work. It's too simple, too linear, too obvious. The decisions are not all that interesting. The scoring system doesn't have that twist in which you may want to maybe do a little bit of a push of luck and try to do something that may pay off later. You just walk your path, which is a straightforward and interesting path until the end of the game. And then, at least in my case, I was happy that the game was over. And mind you, that lasted like 10 minutes, and it felt it was like 8 minutes too much. So unfortunately, Patchwork Doodle is started as a package that cannot fail, as a combination of some things that I really like in gaming, and the final result turned out to be, alas, much less than the sum of the parts.